So, Jared,
Yes.
I was going to make a Jonestown cult joke, but the punchline's too long.
Yeah.
I came across, I was like, I gotta use this one. You know, after the Kool-Aid movie, in the studio.
This is relevant to both.
I was just like, yeah, this works.
That is good.
Is it? Where was that? Jonestown.
What?
Where was Jonestown?
Where?
Mm-hmm.
It was in Jonestown. I don't know.
Yeah, what state?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I don't either. Hey, welcome back to Screen Time Film, a podcast where we discuss a director's filmography in chronological order. Currently doing Paul Thomas Anderson and a few films in. And Jared, podcasting something you do for a billion years or not at all. This isn't fashion.
Right.
So my name is Josh, and this is my co-host Jared.
Josh, I do many, many things, but above all, I am a man, a hopelessly inquisitive man, just like you.
So today we are talking about the film The Master. This came out in 2012. It was rated R, 2 hours and 18 minutes. A naval veteran arrives home from war, unsettled and uncertain of his future, until he is tantalized by a cult and its charismatic leader. So this was also written by Paul Thomas Anderson.
Nice.
Cinematography by Mihai Malikmore Jr. Malamare Jr.
Yep.
The dude that did Megalopolis.
Yeah. He was FFC's DP, his last four.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've seen this guy was work.
We have, yeah.
Which I feel like you'll know some of those were hit or miss. Like some we really liked and other ones were kind of,
some looked really great.
And other ones are kind of.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah, because of the Twixt one. That one was awful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But Tetra looked great.
Yeah, Tetra was great.
That was black and white, though, but yeah.
Anyway, our composer from last week, or last film, Johnny Greenwood.
Yes.
Production costs.
I didn't write anything down. Okay, I'm gonna have to really just guess. I'm gonna say 50 million.
32.
32.
So you're a little lower. So for awards, it was nominated for Best Performance by an Actor in Lead Role for Joaquin Phoenix. Also, Best Performance by an Actor in Supporting Role, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and nominated. And then Best Performance by an Actress in Supporting Role, Amy Adams.
Oh, yeah.
No wins, just nominations.
It's good, all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
Got nominated at least.
Yeah, but it's telling that nothing else got nominated.
Yeah.
And then we have, as we mentioned, Joaquin Phoenix, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, Jesse Plemons, Rami Malek, and those were all that I recognized. You got anybody else?
I had a note about, because it was cool seeing Jesse Plemons and Rami Malek mainly, because this would have been right around Breaking Bad and Mr. Robot probably. Laura Dern, She's in there for a second.
I forgot she was in there. Yeah,
that was the one I had.
I didn't recognize her when I was watching it. I forgot to, and I didn't pick it. I think when I was looking through the list on IMDb, they changed it up in the last month or two. At some point, IMDb they used to when you went to look at the whole cast list.
Yeah,
they used to still do it in, for lack of a better word, importance or well-known order.
Yeah,
but now they changed it to I think as they appear in the film or. I don't know. It's very different. So you can scroll and it's you have to go really far, especially in a film like this where there's a lot of other people before you would maybe find Laura Dern because she didn't show up until much later.
You can't change the.
I don't know. I didn't change it.
Sorting or what?
I I should look. I should double check that. But anyway,
Okay.
it's so when I'm looking at it, it's like
That's weird.
It used to be that they were just there, like the main people that you would looking for. All right, so I had never seen this. Had you?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I just want to double check. So, overall thoughts. What were your overall thoughts on this?
Okay. I don't know how to explain this. I mean, I have a little bit of stuff written down for this, but I think I need to watch this movie like multiple times to fully understand it. At least that was my thing after even finishing it this first time.
Okay.
I found it interesting, but didn't really enjoy it that much.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to revisit and see if I liked it more. Watching it again, and maybe understanding a little bit more. But I do like the pacing, which we talked about I think last time. I guess I really like PTA's pacing, and you don't as much in his films, but I do. So
Okay.
yeah, and that was still here in this film.
Yes, this is similar.
Pacing, yeah. Which I don't really know how to explain it. I just know that I don't know. I gravitate more towards it than you do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what did you think of this movie? It's a very strange movie.
Yeah, so I didn't care for the film in general, but I thought the performances were great.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like how it's like the dialogue, which is where this is like it's such a weird and of course the nominations were kind of telling of this. So the scene, like if you just saw just a scene, it would be like the scene by itself, the dialogue, the acting is very engaging, like
For sure.
and so it's like, oh, that's interesting. But then the overall story is very kind of disjointed and confusing to your point of like, and then I think it really starts to get slow in the middle and the third act, but without getting like, doesn't really go anywhere. And I feel like there's not any real, like, and then also our main characters don't really change or grow in any way.
Yeah.
And so it feels like,
I guess in some way, yeah.
so then to me, then it's kind of like you get to the end, you're like, well, what was the point of that? Because I mean, because when you watch a film, you want either you yourself to learn something and feel like the film has taught you something or given you something, or you want to see the characters that you're hopefully connecting with, go and do something. And I feel like this film was just kind of like,
Well, unless it's like a movie about history, then it's just kind of, you're just learning about history, which this is like loosely, I would say, probably.
it was inspired by
Yeah. So I guess that's more of at least that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, but I mean, even in history, normally, like in general, like something happens, somebody,
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like this,
This is the birth of a cult, religion.
kind of, but like
something.
but it also really didn't. It's not like you saw it manifest into like this giant. I mean, yeah, they end up having this like at least a building, in England, wherever they end up. But anyway, so it was just kind of a lot. So it's like, again, and I feel a little bit like, and this is kind of the extreme version of some of them mentioned and some of these other ones where if like the story's a little lacking, some like it doesn't, but there, there's, you could have tightened it up, you do this thing. And this one just, I think, was the most extreme example of something just kind of, so it was kind of a miss as a film as a whole to me.
Okay.
But yeah.
But to your point of like great performances, though, I guess that's something we can definitely agree on with PTA is he brings out really great performances. Like,
yeah, because I mean, it was like with
all the way from Hard Eight, even.
Yeah,
all these movies.
Last week's film, the last film, There Will Be Blood. Like, like Daniel Day-Lewis is great.
Yeah,
and it's fantastic. But like, and that one I found much more interesting as the overall story, but it just felt like slow, and there's like some pacing issues, I think, from my perspective, and and then also it's funny, I ended up talking to somebody about this in this like over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing, because they were talking about There Would Be Blood and
No Country
for Old Men, and we were talking about, and I mentioned like the cinematography was better in that, even though, and they were like, didn't disagree, but then they were like, but No Country for Old Men won Best Picture that year.
Yeah.
Which I was like, yeah, but doesn't mean they shouldn't want cinematography. But anyway, which means I guess I'm in good company thinking it's the better film of the two, even though was it Blake that disagreed?
I don't know. Because now that we've covered both of them, I've just always loved both of them. So I don't really know which one I like better.
Yeah.
I don't think I can really pick.
Whereas me, it's not even a close call for me, because of I think the No Country as a whole is a great film. And I think the other one definitely has. Yeah. So anyway, but that's not what this podcast is about. This is about The Master.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into some of the main story and kind of like how things play out and some of the stuff. So the first kind of section I have notes about is like just the opening section where Freddie Quill is on the beach and kind of getting introduced to him. Right. So I think it was kind of a weird way to introduce a character, I think. There's things I liked about, like, I liked that it was ambitious in the way it was just like, hey, there's barely any dialogue. It's just like him interacting, but then he's so weird and abrasive with everybody else he's around. It's also just weird, and which is maybe the intent, but doesn't make you want, at least for me, and that actually is one of the questions I wrote down to ask. How did it make you feel about him?
I was interested in him. I think partially because he was so weird, because he's so weird in the whole movie.
Yes.
And it's funny because I was like, his character in this, obviously very different, but there was like hints of like how he acted as the Joker.
I thought the same thing,
which is weird because it's like not the same character at all.
Not the same, but I felt like the Joker was just a more extreme version of this character. Because even the laugh he does is a little like similar, but like not as, it's like dialed back. It's like if you took the Joker and turned it back to like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I was interested in, partially because he's so weird and just how the movie starts, like you mentioned, but also just because my first note is it is kind of crazy to start the movie with like him doing a lot of different things, but like jerking off into the ocean and stuff like that. Like just
and
the things he's doing. That's right. Yeah.
A sand mermaid.
Yep. And you
sculpture.
see the hole there too. Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're like, what?
Yeah.
It's just a weird. And so again, for me, this I was like, you're like, what the heck?
Yep.
But also like, he's supposed to be your main character and you already like dislike him.
Oh, I didn't dislike him, but I don't know. I guess the weirdness of him like
I was
kept
just
me
like,
interested somewhat.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I was like, okay, this guy's a creep, and like, you're just like,
yeah. Partially though because of where he was before that. I mean, obviously, and you see that play out even first time he gets around any females at all. It's like that's the one thing that's on his mind.
Yeah.
The whole time. But because he's in the war before that.
Oh yeah, okay. But that doesn't give you an excuse.
No, it doesn't.
To be that way.
No, not at all. But yeah. Oh yeah, because I mean, you're right though. There is aspects that you dislike him because not only that, the way he treats women, but also like, he harasses that guy, which was around the same time too. I want to say this is after he.
Well, there's a couple. Then it kind of goes into the which is like kind of my next note.
Yeah.
The montage of
that's right.
Him trying to get jobs, right? And he's a photographer.
That's when it is. Yeah,
and then like, though I did think that was a little funny to me, as someone who's done that, like, and he just like, I just need to get the light right, and he just keeps getting closer. But then those lights would be really hot.
Oh yeah.
And so the guy's like, it's really hot, and like those, because I mean nowadays, LEDs and stuff, it's barely any heat coming off them, but like back then, like the lights used for that stuff.
Yeah, because this is I don't know if they say it by the end, but the beginning, it's the late 40s, and I know when Lancaster is recording the audio with Freddie, he says the date also, and I think he says like 1950, because a little bit when they're on the boat. So I don't know how much time it actually spans, but yeah, at this point it's late 40s or 1950 at this point. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, the lights would be crazy hot.
So that did make me laugh. And then, he kind of goes, he's like a photographer when he was like farming, like something. And
yeah.
And it was weird because, I mean, again, this is kind of where like, I feel like this was another part that was kind of confusing because again, there's not a lot of dialogue or anything explain anything. And so you just like, he's a photographer. Then all of a sudden you're like, is time jumping? What is happening here to me when I was a viewer? And then like he's on this farm, and then suddenly someone thinks he poisoned him, and you're like,
that's the last thing, yeah. And then he's on the run, and then finds the boat, yeah.
But and then I feel like there were couple other things in there for briefly too.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
I do love the through line because I don't have a note about it, but the through line of him just making alcohol out of just insane ingredients. Because he does that then, and then obviously Lancaster like loves what he makes him and keeps asking him to make more. But I like that through line because just like it's crazy what he's mixing, but also it's just a funny moment of this movie, which there is, like you mentioned, with the photography as well. Like there is random moments that are actually really funny in this, but obviously it's not a comedy. But yeah, I like those moments.
Yeah, and then. Yeah.
Which is also crazy because you talk about the opening and what all he does, and you're kind of confused, like what's going on. And man, it's almost like a half an hour into the movie when he finally gets on the boat and even meets Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, and that's kind of, yes. And so it's a long time.
It is
like,
a long time, yeah.
Because he also, I mean, he was on a boat at some point as like when he was, I guess, still in the Navy, which you see some of that too.
Yes.
Which is also random, like in there.
Yep.
I don't think we don't see the stuff with his like 15-year-old girlfriend or whatever she is until later when he's sitting down talking, he's kind of hypnotized looking back, right?
Yeah, that's when we see that.
That's a little later, yeah. I didn't think there was any of that mixed in there in that the montage in that first thing. But like you're right, like it's a long time and you're just like, what am I watching?
Mm-hmm.
So,
but you could also say that I feel like for this whole movie. At times you could just be like, what am I watching?
Yeah.
That is a through line.
You're not wrong. That's why it feels very confusing and disjointed per my notes, at least for me.
And no, and I agree. That's why I was like, I enjoyed moments of it, but I didn't really enjoy the movie as a whole. But that's why I think this is one especially, which you could do this with all PTA's movies. But this one in particular, I definitely want to revisit a few times and see if I like it more or understand it more again. I think it definitely is one of those movies, one of those types of movies.
So then he finally stumbles onto the boat as a stowaway. And again, he's woken up by some young, attractive woman that he's hoping something's going to happen. But and then he finally meets the master.
What is his last name? It's Lancaster.
Dodd.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. So, and of course, this scene is great when they actually, because then you got these two crazy good actors, like we're, playing off each other.
But also Amy Adams, which you don't see as much of her yet.
Correct.
Or her performance, but
the moments she is, especially later, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, and she is, I think she's one of the best actresses, honestly. And I do believe she has one, because we talked about her probably the most when we did Arrival with Villeneuve. But yeah, I think she's pretty high up as like
It's true.
one of the
It's
best
just such a
actresses.
weird because like then she did what was the Disney like princess movie.
Oh yeah,
And it's such a weird like
it is. No, when she's in more of like a
where she needs to.
like artsy or
I mean, she was-
serious movie, she's great.
You're right, Arrival, but also it was the vice president movie.
Oh yeah, we did talk about it. Yeah, in Vice. Yeah.
Vice.
Well, you weren't here for it, but yeah, that was another
Yeah.
one.
She was great.
Oh,
in
yeah.
that, and then having to play and do all the makeup and
Yeah, all different
yeah.
times of these characters' lives. Yeah.
Yeah, she was great in that too. She got nominated in that too, or at least
I think so. But she's one of the few that's actually won. I don't remember for what, but yeah, she's actually won.
she actually's won.
Yeah, I believe so.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Maybe it was Arrival.
Maybe. Yeah, so then he does this like processing thing, which is interesting, right? Right. What did you think of that? Like, did you have any, what do you think he was doing? I guess is a better question.
You mean when he sits down with him one-on-one?
Yeah, when you first watch
starts
that
recording?
Yeah, and then he's
I don't know. I think mainly just to get a feel for him. I don't really know in that moment. I don't really know what Lancaster's intentions were. In the moment, I just thought he's just trying to get to know him and at least start testing him in some way, because that's what this is. This thing he does.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure ultimately what he's trying to do in that moment. Now you get a feel for it as it goes, and he does way more with him.
Mm-hmm.
But in this moment, that's all. Yeah. I don't know. What'd you think in that moment?
Well, I was just, I mean, and it was,
Really great scene though,
but, and it was just, again, like,
especially not having to blink.
yeah, it was, but I was just like, is this guy for real? Like, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like, kind of just not.
That's also another through line through the whole movie. Is like, is this guy for real?
Oh, right. Is it something he really believes?
Right.
And he's like doing this because he really believes it, or is it just he knows he's just scamming people? It's a way to manipulate and scam people. Yeah, right.
I have. This is way later, but just because you brought it up, one of the best scenes of the movie, which goes to this point that I love, is when Peggy tells Freddie that he needs to quit boozing, but then the next morning he has a conversation with Val, which is his son, on the front porch, and Val tells him his father's making it all up as he goes.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he's kind of on it, but that's another thing, like you're talking about, that you're kind of wondering about through the whole movie,
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
So then we have the section which I'd say some of the stuff's like, but where it's just like the montage of he's going with the cause.
Yep.
And they show them do different things, and just different cultish type things. This is where you start to really see Amy Adams' character kind
Yes.
of establish her power and dynamic and different scenes, which are good. But this is also where things start to get a little slow for me.
Mhm.
Like, it's like, I was like, okay, what are we
we're
doing
like
here?
right in the middle,
Yeah.
runtime wise now at this point. Yeah.
And this is also where, like, I mean, we kind of talked about this, but like where I was really like, okay, is this guy really trying to do this, or is it a scam? Like, and then, and then we get to right after that scene where he tells them that, and they're on the porch, and then the police show up,
Yeah.
and then we get that right there, that whole, because then Freddy starts freaking out and fighting the police, and then they both end up in jail. Him and
then Freddy continues to freak out.
yeah, and that scene was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, he freaking broke a toilet.
Oh yeah,
This
really cool scene too, because
Yeah.
it was all one take.
yes, like the framing.
Yeah,
With seeing
Really
them
cool.
both jail cells next to each other, and then also the kind of. So here's what. Do you think this was a changing point in the relationship between the two of them?
changing point.
Like, because at this point you're like, what other than him making some weird concoctions of drinks, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is Lancaster getting out of having him around?
I don't know. I only have one more note, and it's about closer to the end that kind
Okay.
of will maybe explain it a little bit more
Okay. All right. Well, I was just
when we get there. But yeah, I'm not. Yeah, in this moment, I don't know.
I thought this scene was kind of a pivotal, obviously, because then they
Definitely
were
pivotal, yeah.
split up a little bit for a little while, and then for Freddy comes back to where they meets up with him again.
Mm-hmm.
But the also think it was like it's like one of those things where both guys kind of said what they were thinking. Like they kind of
Yeah.
dropped any, and both went off on each other and kind of calling each other out on their crap.
Yep.
Which was interesting. And then, then there's Freddy leaving.
Well, also, I wanted to ask you about this because I'm just now remembering. Right around the middle of the film, where they're all singing, and then you just see all the women naked at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did that actually happen, or is he dreaming? Because you see him dozing off.
I don't know.
That was confusing, but
Yeah.
I could really. I mean, but it also makes sense. Like, I could see that happening for
The
sure.
cult type thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, because then,
Because they start off singing, and they're all fully clothed,
yeah. And then,
and then it like cuts, and then they're all
yeah, because then even Amy Adams like obviously has some kind of fat suit. 'Cause she-
prosthetic. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's like pregnant, so she looks like,
Mhm.
but like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things.
That was like one of the few things that looked bad in the movie.
yeah, I was gonna say it
It's like
didn't
you
look
could
very,
see, yeah, I
it
was
like, didn't
like,
look very,
that didn't look good.
it didn't look very real. But,
No,
which is why it was like stood out more.
it did. Yeah,
But yeah. I mean, there was just in that section. There's the just different weird montages of,
Oh, yeah.
of like things. Also, what we kind of talked about then was when one of the times he like is talking to him, he takes him back and kind of hypnotizes him, and that's when we see the flashback of like him meeting which I mean. We don't know what age I guess he's supposed to be, but
No.
like Walking Phoenix does not look young at all.
so she's 15.
And she's 15.
Yeah.
You're like, you look like you're a 40-year-old man at least. And you're supposed to be this 15-year-old. So I don't know. It just was a little weird.
yeah.
The whole scene, though, I think he's supposed to be like 18 or something going off to war, right? Like,
Yeah.
that or something. Like he's supposed to be somewhere in that age.
So then he's in his 20s now.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Also, different time in the 40s. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, like age wise,
Yeah, it's true. I guess.
how
Yeah.
people were then, but yeah.
Yeah, so then eventually he gets a call, right? He gets the call and he's like, he wants to see you.
I don't remember.
I feel like someone like he gets or something. He gets some kind of message, something. So that's why he goes to travels to England to see him.
Oh yeah.
And because it's funny, because then someone says like, you look like you've been look like you.
Well, my final note is actually right before that.
Okay.
Because that's when he finally, because that's when he's finally like not with them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then gets the call and comes back to him for like basically our final scene of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But the scene, another probably the best scene in the movie, I think, at least first time watching it, is when Freddy gets on the motorcycle, starts driving away in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
and you see a close up of Lancaster's face. And what I thought in the moment, which I think was really cool, is you kind of like the look on his face is kind of like seeing that Freddy is finally escaping, and Lancaster is like accepts it in the moment, like, okay, I'm freeing him. But then ultimately, and this is what I kind of think is like kind of what he's doing with Freddy, is he also doesn't want to give up and lose his pet. So Freddy seems like kind of like a pet to him, which is kind of what I think, at least this time watching it.
Which is how you would have answered my question earlier.
Yeah,
why
I
you
think
said let's
so.
wait till
At least right now, yeah. Mhm.
Like, what did he want out of it?
Yeah.
It's just somebody to play with.
Yep.
Manipulate.
Yep, that's what it seems like.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
But anyway, that is when he finally, let's say, quote unquote, escapes the cult. But then
he gets a call and he's like, "Hey, he wants to see you."
it is funny. Yeah, he actually does say, "I miss you." Even I think,
something like that.
Yeah,
and then
he says, "I miss you too."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he has to travel from the U.S. to England just to go see him.
Yeah, but we also get a scene, which I didn't really. I feel like you're supposed to feel more in this scene. I didn't really feel much for it when he goes back and tries to visit his girl.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
I don't really know like what was
because that
supposed to be with that.
Because when we saw him before, like in the like they just felt like this creepy old man. Like and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And it never felt like there was like
which I'm assuming timeline wise in the movie, that's probably when he goes. Yeah, at some point, because he escapes and he's living somewhere. Goes and tries to see her. And then what you mentioned, getting the call.
And then we get to the final scene where they're kind of in there, they're talking and well, Amy Adams' character's in it. What I keep saying her name's
I don't remember
Peggy.
her name. Peggy, okay.
And Peggy is also in there, and that's what she says, the line that I used in
where
she's like, it's 1 billion years worth of work or it's nothing.
It's like a perfect time for her to say something like the work is mysterious and important, basically. Like she could have said something like that too.
Perfect callback. Yeah. And then but this is where it's like kind of like it ends, and like I was like, oh
yeah,
everyone's still not really any growth here, and that's kind of, I was like, oh, okay, what was the point of this then?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely it seems like,
so
you know what, actually now I'm thinking about it seems like a through line through actually a lot of PTA's movies is not all the characters in his movies, but there's at least someone in each of his movies that's like kind of like an outcast or someone like that's on like the fringes of society that like he implements into whatever story he's trying to tell in all these movies. You know, we've seen that in Hard Eight, Boogie Nights, obviously. Magnolia, it's kind of all of them to an extent.
Definitely
Punch Drunk Love a little bit too.
Yeah. Adam Sandler's character,
yeah. There Will Be Blood, maybe.
And that's the least of.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not.
But it's something he likes to play with.
The main character in that, like he's looked at as like one of the not scoundrel, but like the small dogs in the right. Like he's kind of trying to build do oil wells and stuff. Like the big guys are all like laughing at him and stuff. Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't know if that's the point he was trying to do, like not really have any growth with these characters, but he definitely likes to implement these type of characters for sure in pretty much all of his films.
Yeah. So then That's my kind of last question, because we kind of talked about the other. I had two questions, like what do we think Dodd was? Did he actually care at all about Freddie or not?
Right.
And I think he did a little bit. I think that they seem to have like a real relationship. It wasn't. I don't think.
I think at least
it
by
was,
some
wasn't
point.
all pretend.
No, I think at some point, and especially by the end, they both have a fondness for each other for sure.
And then, what do you think? What do you think Freddie was getting out of being part of the group that he couldn't find anywhere else? Why he stayed with them for so long?
I think, well, this is part of my themes and messaging, but a community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he didn't really have that. I mean, I guess that's more camaraderie, I guess, with your
Yes.
Navy, whatever, your the people you're with when you're at war. But this is like a, not in such a, I guess a dire situation where you have to be comrades, because it's like you don't know if this is going to be it, but like just a nice, I guess, community that you don't have to be on the edge of.
He felt like
battle.
he was accepted.
Yes.
And then and that montage in the beginning where he was like trying to find somewhere to belong,
right,
and be accepted, and he was working at this place or that place or doing this thing, and everyone just kept throwing him out or getting upset at him or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was somewhere that they at least tolerated him, and felt, so then he all right, that's all my notes on that part.
That's it in my notes. I just wanted to ask you, because we touched on it, I think, in There Will Be Blood pod when we were mentioning that The Master was going to be our next film we were going to cover. Is it actually loosely based on Scientology at all? Like, I don't really know anything about Scientology.
It's inspired somewhat by, and like using that as
or some of the fundamentals of,
or something.
Okay.
I did find, and maybe it'll be in the trivia, but I did see something about like even just an IMDb like general notes that it was like he took that as like a he got some ideas from, or at least some ideas from, but it's not an actual like here's based on that true. It's not based on a true story. Of that.
I know. That's why I mentioned like it seems like
based
it's more
on
of a
true story. Normally takes some liberties, and this is like no. He must have either learned about that, and was like, oh, that's interesting, and pulled some generalities from it. I don't know. I don't know how much is, because I don't know enough about the.
Me either. Surprising though, Tom Cruise isn't in this one then.
Right. Right.
Missed opportunity. Yeah. Mr. Scientology himself.
Yes, this is true. The poster boy for Scientology.
He is. He really is.
All right, let's get into the cinematography in this.
Yeah.
Couple things interesting. All right, so one thing that is interesting is they shot this on 65 millimeter film.
Ooh, okay.
Instead of 35, which means it's kind of like the difference between HD and 4K, right?
Yeah.
The best bit, like, and so I think it just brings up some things that, and I was noticing this when I was watching, but I didn't know this information specifically, but I just noticed, but there's a lot more detail in the texture, and like, it just seems sharper, right? Like,
yes.
Than like average thing. But then also it kind of creates this like larger scale feel to things. And so it's interesting because there's a lot of times then it takes away a little bit from the intimacy of the moments when it's just character stuff, because it feels a little bit broader scale. So, I don't know. Did you notice something different like that? Like,
yeah, no, I did. Overall though, I just want to say, like, I think this film looks beautiful, pretty much the whole movie. Like, I love the look of it. I wanted to ask you though, actually, I think you only saw this at the beginning of the film, but what kind of lens were they using? Like, was it anamorphic or something? Because it looked similar to like Shogun at times. Like that, I remember you talked about when we covered that, the look of it. It was almost like not fisheye, but it kind of had this like look, at least I think it was during like when he was on the beach at the beginning. There were certain shots.
Well, you wouldn't, I don't think.
And I think anamorphic is what they did in Shogun, right?
Well, I think they did use anamorphics in Shogun. I think.
So I was wondering if they use that
But
for the beginning
anamorphic
of this.
is more of a is a different aspect ratio. And so I don't
Oh, okay.
think so. It's instead typical lens, the aperture, it's the aperture, the shutter, well, but it's circular when it captures, right? The image in the glass is circular, and then on anamorphic, it's spherical.
Oh, okay.
And then the image when it's recorded to the sensor is like compressed.
Mm-hmm.
So then when it's in post, you got to like basically de-squeeze it is what they call it, and then it stretches out, and then it looks. But because of that, then at different focal lengths, like a 35 millimeter spherical lens versus anamorphic lens, at 35 millimeters, you will, because of the way it's capturing stuff, it will basically have, even though the person will look about the same distance,
Yeah.
it will actually be wider because it will capture more left and right. So it kind of gives you this different perspective. So that's kind of
That's what it seemed like they were.
But
at the beginning.
on Shogun, they also use these pretty wide lenses at times.
Yeah.
And then you're getting some of the aberrations on the edge of the lens because and so it distorts and it's a little blurry.
That's what I was seeing. Yeah.
And that's what I think they were using in this.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's probably also because they were shooting at such a higher, like basically higher bit, resolution.
Yeah.
At the 65 millimeter that it's more noticeable. Because again, the same thing happens. I ran into this the first time I shot 8K with a RED camera, and like some of the lenses we had wouldn't even really work on it. Like, it just, not that it wouldn't work, but just like things were not sharp as they should be because the lens itself didn't support really that detail, right? And so you get some of these weird aberrations. Now, there's this weird mix of like, sometimes you like that because you want to kind of have that feel, and it kind of, you want some character in your lens, but then too much can make it feel like muddy. And so it's like this weird, because then in reality, if something's too clean and perfect, like it's like, then it's too fake, right? If you're like, so there's this weird play in that where you want stuff to have a little bit of character to them in the lens, but
definitely.
And so, if you go too wide, then you start picking up you almost like you're just seeing the distortion on the edge of the lens.
Okay.
And the clarity. So I think that's what was showing up, because I don't think this is anamorphic.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't notice it being so.
But I didn't notice it later in the movie. Like I said, it was just the beginning.
Yeah.
But also, I love I guess it's partially the color grade. Looked really great. But also, I wanted to ask, going into that, it looked kind of like more action. I think that you probably already answered me with this, with the type of film they're using, but it looked like higher contrast too, which I thought looked really, really cool. Is that what does it?
I mean, I don't know if the type of film would make it higher contrast. It gives you more detail. Contrast has more to do with the way you light things, and
that's true.
And right, like so, like contrast would be like the bright to the darks.
Yeah.
Right. And
I don't know. Did you notice that or?
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. So I just put it was interesting color. They had a very muted palette.
Yeah.
With harsher contrast.
Okay.
And there's like kind of like soft blues and browns and grays that kind of give it more of a, I feel like a haunting vibe, or a little like disorient, not disorienting is about the right word, but like just kind of like unsure vibe, right? Like it's not warm to be like happy, right? And then the also the contrast kind of, it's not soft lighting, which also means like kind of brings it a more appealing and comforting look. It's a little harsher, which is also goes with like kind of making you feel uneasy and uncertain about what you're watching and seeing unfold, which makes
sense like the whole, pretty much the whole movie. Yeah. Okay.
And then, like I was mentioning with the larger stuff, the width, the distance, and it's like there was a lot of characters that are center framed,
Yeah.
which then, and is supposed to kind of give you that feeling of more isolation. And again, also with the larger film reel, like it kind of gives us like more of a larger space around them, right?
Nice. Okay.
And then, yeah, as we talked about, there's multiple longer takes. Like,
Yes.
I mean, the camera's not moving, which also allows tension to play out. And then I just kind of had a note about like some symbolism, like especially like water. There's a lot of imagery of water in Freddy.
Oh, yeah.
It kept cutting back to even just that
The
shot
water from the boat.
Yeah, the back of the boat, like the tail of the boat, and just other, which I guess, I was just kind of guessing. It was just one of the things I noticed, and I'm like, well, is that supposed to mean like he's constantly adrift, right, in life? And which kind of says,
Turbulence of the of the water. Yeah.
But yeah, those are kind of my notes about the cinematography. But yeah, overall, like to your point, like
I love the look of it.
I think it was a good choice in one of those choices, and yeah, just stylistically, it was a good fit for what the story was trying to be.
Definitely.
So what about the score music? I don't have any notes for this. So.
Okay. Johnny Greenwood,
Yeah,
lead guitarist of Radiohead, which is crazy.
I have to mention that again. Right?
Yeah, I got to mention it again because it's just I didn't realize and I think he does the rest of his movies. I know he's doing one battle after another too. So I'm assuming he just did these last
you liked
couple.
working with him, and he just said,
Yeah, because it was the other guy that we were familiar with from other movies or from other directors.
Mm-hmm.
Did like the first couple,
Yep.
and then switched to him. I really like the score of this movie. I really love the very, very, very beginning. The staccato strings like hit really like it's like really powerful sounding, which was awesome for the very beginning. I like that. But then also there's different points in the movie where it can be very soft and small, and it's just as effective as with the score. And they do that really well with different parts of the movie. Like I said, the very beginning, it's very big. And then throughout, there's moments where the score is really soft and is still great, I thought. This is one thing I was wondering about that kind of makes sense with it, if they want to make this feel kind of like an older movie or more to the time period, is I noticed there was something with the dialogue and sound design that made it sound like maybe it was a film in the 1940s, because I heard it sounded, I don't know if you heard this, but a lot of times it sounded like there was more like room noise or more like a room mic, like they were picking up more in the room, and it wasn't like as direct, because I could hear that more with the dialogue. But then also it sounded like there was like no compression, which is interesting also, which would be more of something they would have done in an old movie when there was dialogue. And then also when stuff would get loud at times too, like an old movie, it would also get almost like clipping or distorted a little bit, which also is another thing with like older movies. And obviously that would have been an intentional choice. You wouldn't have had to have done that.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. A lot with the sound, not as much, I guess, with the picture of it though, but with the sound, I noticed a lot of different things that they definitely made a choice of to make it sound old. But it's cool. I liked it, but I don't know. At times, I kind of wish they would at least compressed the dialogue more, because yeah, it was just very I don't know, very room sounding.
Yeah,
which is weird. So you didn't notice that?
No.
Okay.
No, I believe you though. sometimes I like if I'm like I'm trying to, especially something when I'm trying to understand the story,
Yeah.
watch the characters, and then I'm paying attention to cinematography, like the audio, music, score stuff. Unless it's really catches me, like it's not something I would, it's like another layer below what I'm paying attention to.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, the overall theme and message. I know you kind of touched on a little bit what you had. So what I wrote down is it's about the need to belong to something or to someone, but then what happens when someone can weaponize that?
Yeah. That's similar to what I had.
Which is basically what a cult is.
Very true. Yeah, what I had was community and power, which is also essentially what this is.
Cool. Well, let's see if there's anything interesting in the trivia.
Yeah.
And well, okay. During the jail scene, Joaquin Phoenix breaks a real toilet. His actions were entirely improvised.
That's a real toilet.
Due to the historical past of the building where the scene took place, the toilet was considered historical. He had no intention of breaking the toilet, nor did he think it was possible.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's not easy to break a real toilet. I thought they were set up a fake toilet
Yeah.
to destroy, like that's crazy.
Assumed it was like a set or something. Says the trailers were edited by P.T. Anderson himself without any permission from the studio or any permission's probably a bad word for that, but not any influence from the studio probably.
He's always done that though, right?
After that one, remember?
Right.
Because he didn't like that, so then the trailers were notable for consistently mostly of footage that not featured in the final cut of the film. So he was just like pulling stuff that wasn't in the film.
That sometimes bothers me when I see a trailer and then there's a scene in the trailer and then I don't see it in the movie. I'm like, dang.
Yeah, but that happens some more because it's not, most of the time it's not intentional. It's more like they have a rough cut and then they end up cutting something and or reworking some stuff and it just gets taken out. I mean, famously Rogue One was that, but that was because they did some reshoots and working that. So
yeah.
Drinking jug juice is Navy slang for him mixing the fuel with the cans of fruit. And it was detailed by the staff aircraft carrier USS Hornet Museum, which is one of the locations they used for filming.
Okay. So that's a term for it, whatever he was making.
Jug juice, yeah. In 2018, P.T. Anderson said The Master was the film he was most proud of.
That's weird. That's weird that that's the one he's the most proud of.
Yeah. Cult. Makes you wonder what P.T. Anderson's into. This marked Philip Seymour Hoffman's fourth and final Oscar nomination.
Also, I believe the
last film with P.T. Anderson.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Following his untimely death in 2014.
Yeah. I was going to say, it was definitely around this time he passed away. Or shortly after. But what's cool is, which we'll see in the final movie we'll be covering, he then, PTA, starts working with his son, Cooper Hoffman, which is cool.
Says New York Times reported that P.T. Anderson had originally conceived the idea for this film 12 years earlier, which would have been in 2000. Intriguingly, this was 1 year after Anderson had directed the most famous Scientologist in the world, Tom Cruise, to an Oscar nomination in Magnolia. At the press conference for the world premiere of the film at the Venice Film Festival, Anderson reported that he had screened the film for Cruise out of respect, but that Cruise and Anderson remained friends and any discussions between them would remain private.
Is Tom Cruise trying to rope him in to Scientology?
So, in order to achieve the effect of clenching his mouth and talking out of the side, Joaquin Phoenix had his dentist attach metal plates to his teeth with rubber bands to hold them shut. Rubber bands weren't strong enough to hold his mouth shut, so he removed them. But the metal plates, complete with screws that slightly cut up the inside of his cheek, were enough of a constant reminder that it allowed him to play that aspect of the character.
Again, though, it's kind of similar to sometimes how he talks with Joker as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is sad. Phil Seymour had his first drink in 23 years at the wrap party for this film, leading to a relapse of his alcoholism.
Oh. Did that contribute to how he died?
I don't know. It's kind of implied in that.
Dang.
Joaquin Phoenix's parents escaped from the infamous Children of God cult in the 1970s.
I never even heard of that.
Yeah, but it must be. I forgot about this. The ink blot cards in the hospital scene with the psychologist are real ones. However, he skips from card 1 to card 4, which violates the very, very strict rules of the Rorschach administration.
Rorschach, yeah.
Rorschach, yeah.
Yeah. That a good point to another funny scene. Where it's like his response is like, yeah, obviously that's all he has on his mind. It is funny also, the doctor though is just like, the way he responds though, he's just like, interesting. It's like, is it interesting? Like, you know what this
Right. So according to the editor of the film, Leslie Jones, the hardest part of the post-production for the film was the editing of the window to the wall sequence.
Oh yeah. Why though? I mean, I know the editing, like he keeps coming back to that scene or him doing that, but yeah.
Jeremy Renner was originally going to play Freddy when the film was prepped to shoot years ago, but when financing fell through and Joaquin Phoenix was available following his I'm Still Here project, the filmmakers were able to cast him.
I like Jeremy Renner, but that would be bad. That would not be the correct choice.
Yeah. A very different movie.
Yeah.
All right. So any final thoughts?
No. I definitely want to revisit it.
And I definitely don't.
No? Okay.
I have no desire to watch that again. I don't think watching it over and over, it might be a little less confusing, but it's not going to fix what I don't like about it.
Right.
So, yeah. So, have you seen this film? You know, our dedicated audience out there.
Yeah.
Let us know what your thoughts are. You can email us at feedback@screentimepod.com or leave a comment and or send us a DM. Next movie next week is Inherent Vice.
Yes.
I have not seen this one either. Have you?
Nope.
All right.
I think Joaquin Phoenix is our main character again. Okay. I think.
Interesting. But yeah, so if you, we appreciate you watching or listening, and we also appreciate if you subscribe. So you can subscribe and like or whatever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And if you'd like, you can follow each of us on our individual accounts on Instagram. I'm at J Youngbar.
And I'm at Jared Youngbar.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time.